Indie Game Garden.
Piotr Bunkowski is a solo game dev from Gdańsk, Poland, that works on various FMV projects. He created his first game, A Trip to Yugoslavia, an experimental interactive film, in 2016 while he was still in high school. Then he worked on Purgatorium, A Family Torn Apart, a moody murder mystery about tense family dynamics and drug abuse. Now, after a 5-year hiatus, Piotr is back. This new one is called One Rotten Oath. It came out on Steam on November 28th, 2025. One Rotten Oath is a story-driven FMV plus FPS hybrid with horror elements. In other words, it's right up my alley. Let's give a warm welcome to Piotr. Hi, Piotr. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi!
Can you talk me through your journey with games? What first got you into playing games? And when did you decide to start making them? In particular, I'm wondering what drew you to kind of your brand of FMV games in particular?
That's a really long story because I remember that my first PC was a Windows 98 machine, which was completely butchered. My uncle bought that PC to me, and I remember that it didn't have anything. The sound card was actually torn out of that PC. I had 1 gigabyte of drive, which was insane at the time back then. And I didn't have that 3D accelerator, which are actually more common now back then. So I literally played anything I could get my hands on. And I remember I had this GTA 2 disc that was completely scratched but still working, old DOS games like Tempest 2000, some freeware games like Happy Land Adventures and stuff like that. And I remember when I found out about MacDoc McCree. That game actually was super eye-opening for me because you saw these actors on the screen, and I thought to myself, how I don't even have the 3D acceleration on my card. How am I seeing the real people on my screen? And I remember I was blown away by it. Which is kind of weird because before I got that PC, I had this weird SNES clone. So I was playing all of those games like Super Mario Bros. And stuff like that, but it was emulated in this weird and poor way. So it wasn't running at all like the real deal. So when I got that PC, I was completely blown away. Of course, by that time, Windows XP was actually starting to be more common, and my friends actually were playing stuff like Need for Speed Underground 2 while I was stuck playing old games. But that kind of, gave me that spark as a kid to discover all those games and, getting to all my friends' places and seeing what they are playing at the current time. Just, it was a different time back then, I think, because we had all of those internet cafes near our towns, so you could be playing old games at your home, playing something new at your friend's place, but then just go to the internet cafe and play Unreal Tournament or Counter-Strike, although Unreal was actually more common at our town back then. So this was actually really interesting, and this, I think, got me into the games, that variety and the thing that you can experience all of that things. So that was actually one of those stuff. And in terms of FMVs, that Mad Dog McCree was the first game that actually introduced me to the FMV games, but that was kind of stuck at the back of my head for a long time. But then when the Wales Interactive guys were starting to get more traction and they released the stuff like The Bunker or The Late Shift, I remember that I was, playing this and thought to myself, damn, this kind of game is getting back to the mainstream. Maybe maybe I should try it myself. So that was the start of my adventure with the FMVs, but I think we're gonna dissect it more as we go with the questions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you providing that background. My next question happens to be like, what in particular fascinates you about the FMV genre? I know you mentioned like talking about how you were seeing kind of the full people without the 3D accelerator. But I would also love to hear in your words, like what FMV is, like in particular for my listeners who maybe are a little less familiar with FMV games these days. Like, can you describe how the genre is unique?
You know, I wanted to say that the genre is dead and that's what's fun about it, but that's not really true, taking into the account that we have the titles like Dead Reset coming out and The Heart of the Forest came out as well. And there is this Tenebris Somnia. It's a hard title, but it's also like sort of an FMV thing. And it's a full motion video. What that is? It's basically stuff that was used in the 90s to make sure that the games are super realistic, and this was supposed to be this next big thing. And we had like old consoles like Sega CD or 3DO that were supposed to give us those kind of experiences like movie video like, and real stuff, real actors. I remember there were a few games that had those like big names in them. I think it was Reaper. It
Mm.
was Gabriel Knight, I think, also had some kind of like popular names from around that time. But yeah, that was supposed to be the future, but that didn't work out. So that's why we are here. And the thing that always fascinated me about it was how it was made, because it was weird, always weird from the start, because it's not a movie, it's not really a game. Then what is it? How does that work? Because in terms of the games using 3D or 2D graphics, you actually know how that works. You kind of have the overall idea on how it works. But in terms of like movies with the real people in them and the entire HUD or UI or stuff like that, how does that work? And that actually sparked like something in me that I wanted to explore this. How do I connect those worlds, like the game and the movies? And of course, we had the pretty good examples like Phantasmagoria, for example, which was a point-and-click game. And I think I should like mention it that the FMVs were pretty popular in the point-and-click genre. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go out of scope with my projects in terms of that. But it's a really niche and really exceptional like genre of games. And I remember playing those even weirder ones like the arcade games such as Area 51. I think it was also super weird, like how do you synchronize that soldier like dying when you shoot at him because he's a movie? How do you synchronize all of this? And I guess it was this curiosity that pushed me into this. So yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm kind of glad that this genre of games is coming back. I know that some of the players are kind of skeptical about it because we have all of these modern games, great graphics, photorealism on like every corner, and that's what's interesting to me, because today we have the better gear and better those abilities and softwares to make those kind of games work. In the 19s, come on, we had like blue screen instead of green screen. So yeah, we were like a step backwards then. But now I think we have something like the technology is here, so we can explore this genre once again. And I'm kind of happy that it's coming already. So yeah, that's how it works. I think that's my hot take on this entire situation.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to hear, and it's also really cool to connect the dots between you feeling fascinated by how you synchronize kind of an enemy dying in a full motion video context and having that be a part of One Rotten Oath, which is your most recent game. Playing through that, it's cool to see the connective tissue there. After making a trip to Yugoslavia in high school and having to cancel Purgatorium, a family torn apart midway through its development, you took a 5-year hiatus from game dev. And it seems like this was a formative period for you. I would love to hear more about this decision, why you decided to take your break, maybe what you learned from it or what was going on during that time.
I think we should start from a trip to Yugoslavia by itself, because that was a weird time in my life, because back then I was in high school. So, I had this weird fascination with FMV games, and I remember that I always wanted to be in a game dev. Like I said before, there was something always that glue me to the games, like made me curious. And I wanted to get into the industry somehow. And I remember when I was in high school, I actually got in touch with Hades Productions. It was a small studio, like multinational kind of gig with a few people. And I remember they were working on the fun game Slender Anxiety, which was based on the then, big Slender Man craze. Do you remember that? Like, it was so long ago, but it feels like yesterday. And I remember that I joined the team, but I was translating the game for them, back before the AI translators were even a thing. So I was translating the game to Polish, and I remember that I did this and I was in touch with them all the time. But then we had this, school projects coming around on my years. So I actually spoke with my few friends from school, and we had those old military terrains in our town of Tczew. So we went there and thought to ourselves, okay, we're gonna record 15 minutes of the raw video material. We're gonna do a simple choice-based interactive movie. Come on, just for fun. What's gonna happen? And we recorded one route for a trip to Yugoslavia, which, like I said, was a 15 minutes of video material. And when I had this when I had this done in those weird YouTube thumbnail kind of form where you clicked on a different playlist to get into a different video, and we actually thought to ourselves, yeah, we have a interactive movie game on YouTube. Wow, that's a big thing for us. And I remember that people from Hades Productions actually noticed that, and they contacted me again and were like, hey, we're working on Unity and we were wondering how we could implement certain cutscenes, and we saw that you're making those weird stuff with your friends. Maybe you can create a small test with us based on the material that you have. And I thought to myself, no way, that's not gonna happen. You're gonna take 15 minutes of the video material done by guys from high school and turn it into an interactive movie on Unity. Come on, do you hear yourselves? And they were like, yeah, we're gonna do it just for the fun. Why not? And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure it's gonna work, but let's try it. And I remember that we did, and we've created the public preview of the game, and we just, threw everything together, and I showed the game on the open school days where everybody just, bulged in from all the schools and just, checked out whatever the school was doing. And I actually got the entire computer class to myself. And I thought no one's gonna come around and play our game. But then people were just barging in through the door and were like, dude, you've created a video game, man, a video game. You're in high school. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but that's, nothing special. There are better games. And people were completely frantic about it. And when the guys from Hades Productions actually like noticed that there is attraction. They suggested, hey, maybe we should turn it into the full game. And we said to ourselves, okay, let's do it. And we went back to the military terrains and we've recorded like 45 minutes of the entire material. There was a lot of routes in this game. I think you can get like 10 endings in A Trip to Yugoslavia, and there is a Final Fantasy inspired minigame there as well. It was an absolute like weird time in my life. And when we released the game back on Game Jolt in 2016, Markiplier played it. And we were completely blown away because we thought that maybe a few people from Tczew will play it and no one will ever hear about it again. But then, Markiplier played it, like everybody else started playing it, and we were completely blown away and we couldn't just, wrap our heads around this. How the hell did we make it this far? And I remember there was maybe not huge pressure then, but from that point we actually started to get the publishing deals, and we accepted one of those and released the game on Steam. Back then the green light was a huge thing, so it wasn't as easy as it is today to get on Steam.
Right.
And then the weird part happened because when you're signing a publishing deal, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do stuff in front of my PC and let everything happen. But then everything went really weird because we started touring around the entire Poland and just, promote the game on those huge events, huge local festivals and stuff like that. We were on Pixel Heaven 2016. We actually got into Ars Independent in Katowice. There was a lot of weird events there, and you have this weird feeling because all of your peers are learning at school and you're just touring the Poland on your last year of high school. And I remember this weird situation where Superhot was a big thing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And, I played it as well. It was and still is a great game. And we were just displaying A Trip to Yugoslavia back then. And then we see him, Piotr Iwanicki, the dude who created Superhot, just comes up at us completely casually, plays our game, and we were completely frozen in place. What is he going to say about our game? It was completely bollocks. And then he just stands up, turns to me, and he just shakes my hand, and I'm like, dude, you're earning probably thousands of dollars today. Should I wear a glove or something? And he's telling to me with a straight face, that's the best shit I played today. And just straight up leaves. And I'm like, I don't know if he was being sarcastic or did he meant that. And I'm just telling that story all the time whenever someone asks me about A Trip to Yugoslavia, because I was barely 18 back then, and it was super, super weird. You have this weird syndrome that you shouldn't have even been there in the first place. So when we finished with A Trip to Yugoslavia, then the pressure started because I wanted to do something big, and the guys from Hades Productions also wanted to do something big. So we actually came up with another project, Purgatorium, A Family Torn Apart, and it was great. Working on this was great from the start because we had this, better budget because we had money this time around. We had better actors, not just, friends from school. We had our own makeup artist on set. We had better cameras, other locations, not just, big forest and all the military terrains. And it was I'm gonna say this a lot because all of those experiences were completely weird to me. And actually, I had big hopes in terms of Purgatorium because, there was a lot of money thrown into it. And a lot of our time and effort from me, from actors, from guys at Hades Productions as well. But something went awry. Basically, when we were almost at the end of the development, which is like a big salt in my wound, Hades Productions representative told me that, well, we would like to add something else, something more. We want this to be bigger. And I wanted this to be more of a, weird point and click, maybe with Resident Evil references, but they wanted to have this deep, silent, hillish feeling with weird rooms and weird like portals and branching narrative, stuff like that. But the problem was that even though the Hades Productions guys had this, technical aspect of the project, I had to come up with the locations, the actors, entire gear. Like I had to do a casting call for all the people. I had this harder part here. I had to write the additional scenarios for all the things that were happening on the screen. And I remember that we had this weird moment where we had more monsters in the basement in the game that I could possibly have put in the script itself. So I had this huge problem where the story was completed the way I wanted it to be. It was basically finished, but the guys were like, no, let's add more monsters, let's add more depth. And I'm like, if I'll be writing more here, I'll be just shooting myself at the knee right now because it will lose all the meaning I had from the start. And, the pressure was huge from people, like from the fans that were actually waiting for our game, because from that point on, when Markiplier played our game, other bigger YouTubers were playing our other titles as well. I remember that Gap Smolders, I think, actually pulled the game as well. And she played through the entire Purgatorium demo, and we were completely blown away by it as well. And you have this feeling that fans are waiting, streamers, YouTubers are waiting, and you have this pressure from the studio that you are co-working with. And at the certain point, I thought to myself that it's too much. I just can't do this anymore. And the pressure was so big on me that I actually stepped down from the game dev itself. I said to the guys, sorry, I want out. I just can't do this anymore. And if you want, you can just take the entire code and everything we did here, just do something with it. I just want out. I just felt like I can't do this anymore. And I remember I became like totally depressed because, you're pulling a lot of funds, a lot of your energy into the game. Like it's not just your energy, it's the energy of the actors, of the entire crew that's working with you as well. It's not just you anymore, it's all of those people around you. And I remember I felt like I let everyone down. I felt like I couldn't create anymore. Like it's not for me. I just screwed everything up, and I just gotta like go. It's not for me. And I remember it lasted for a few years. Like I couldn't pull myself together to do another game, like do something else, or at least try to create something. And that changed when I started working as the internal video game reviewer. I just, landed the job. I actually did a lot of weird like jobs throughout this 5 years hiatus. I worked at the hotel reception desk. I actually worked at the local TV station. I went through the local radio station as well. And I eventually landed the job as a video game reviewer. And when I saw all those amazing games that are being created by like one person, two dudes, or I don't know, like a core team of three, I thought to myself, come on, I don't need that. All of those like people, big teams, big budgets and stuff like that. I can just do this like I did a trip to Yugoslavia back in the day. Just sit at my computer, do everything at the low budget, and just try to create something. It doesn't have to be big, it's supposed to be small. And I remember that when I was coming back home, I just, stopped at the lights. And when I was looking at those lights, I thought to myself, if not now, then when? I'm 27 years old, so I gotta take my chance while I still have that time. And the first thing I did when I got home was just, get all of those cameras back and install all the software and just try to do something. And I remember that I booted up the Unity after all of that time, and I just couldn't understand anything from it at all. Like, I coded stuff at C sharp, and then I just forgot everything after 5 years. I just didn't know where to start. And I gave up from the start and thought to myself, no, that can't be the only option. And I started to look around the engines, and I thought GDevelop. It was like a small weight engine strictly for 2D games. And when I started working on this, it was like a normal engine, something like a Construct 3 or stuff like that. Today, the studio creating the GDevelop engine have this weird policy that I'm kind of have a hard time agreeing to, since I'm, still on the old version of the engine, let's just put it that way. But then I just started tinkering, because I have this 2D engine. How much can I get off of it? Like, can it be so powerful as Unity, or will I have to make some sacrifices in order to get this to work? And I remember that I actually started recording everything just like the old times. I had all of that knowledge of recording full motion videos. So I asked my brother to help me with a few mutants for One Rotten Oath, and we acted everything on the green screen in our 42 square meter apartment and just did everything there. And every mutant is separated into 4 animations, into 4 video clips, or at least I thought so from the start. And it's basically walking, attacking, dying, and taking damage, if I remember correctly. And I remember that when we actually recorded everything, when everything was done, I just sat to this GDevelop engine and started to implement things, and a few videos, it's gonna go just fine. But then the engine popped out this big pop-up on me saying, the level can only have 1 video per scene. And I'm like, but I have 5 mutants with 4 video clips. What am I gonna do about this now?
Yeah.
And I was basically at the point where, okay, I started another project and it's gonna go right to the trash. And then I thought, no, I'm gonna do everything frame by frame. I got here this far, I'm gonna do it. Man, this took half a year to just cut everything out. And when I did this, I thought to myself, no, I started doing everything on GDevelop. I gotta see this through to the end. And I remember that the engine didn't have those, scripts that I wanted to work on. So I had to do a few things in JavaScript as well, which I thought would be easier than C sharp, but it wasn't. And when I actually got to a few recent events like Poznań Game Arena 2025, people were just straight up calling me crazy. Like, dude, why did you choose the JavaScript? You could do this in Unity way easier, and yet you just went through with this route like a total madman. And I'm like, well, that seemed like a proper thing to do back then, so I did. And, that cutting those sprites out and trying to make something work on the engine that wasn't completely accustomed to this was, weird, completely bollocks. And I would do this again, totally. Like, I learned so much from doing this and trying to get that framework to work. And I remember when I actually showed the first trailers of the game online, the guys from the G Develop, from the engine itself, contacted me and were like, "How did you do that? Like, why? Why and how?" And I remember they actually spoke to me and did an interview with me and put it on their page as well.
Oh,
And
cool.
I wasn't holding myself back. I just said up straight, your engine isn't great for FMV games, but I see the potential. And I thought, no, they are not gonna release that interview at all. But they did. And what's even more interesting, I got the mail like 2 weeks later with the like message, check the engine in like a few days. And they patched everything up. Everything that I actually, said to them that it didn't work or it didn't help me at all. And it was quite awesome then that they did this. And it's interesting because when I got to this, I thought that I would never do this again. That my story actually ended way back in that 2017, 2018, or even 19, depending on how you look at it. But then I was just in the thick of it. I was programming all of that stuff. I was preparing the sprites. I was recording the full motion videos. I was doing all of the photos around. And I actually was in awe that I could do this again. And I was glad that I tried, at least tried to do this. And this small prototype that I was working on turned out to be a fully fledged FMV and FPS hybrid, which I'm completely glad that it turned out to be great. So yeah, I completely talk a lot. So if you want, you can just go cut in through my words, because I'm basically, whenever someone asks me about my games or inspiration, I can just go on, and I'm always like, no, this guy was the host, and I was talking throughout the whole podcast.
No, it's wonderful. It's if I could do a podcast where I'd say 0 words, I would, because your story is what I'm here for, and I know what a lot of the listeners are here for too. So I appreciate you taking us through it. It's a fascinating one, and all the ups and downs I think mirror what a lot of folks in the games industry have experienced during their time working, whether it's through getting laid off and then going indie and having some successes and failures, or whatever path they might have taken. But you're back with One Rotten Oath, as you've said, and you've described how you got there. It's a game with an extremely striking visual style, and we've heard some of the trials and tribulations that have brought you toward kind of this final product. I was wondering if you could describe the game for my listeners, just as far as like from a story perspective, and like the origins of the idea.
Okay, so in terms of the game itself, One Rotten Oath is, like I said, the hybrid of the full motion video game and the first person shooter. You're playing as a survivor during the post apocalypse, and you have to defend this bunker in the middle of the forest, in which the last people of the nearby town live in. But then during the night watch, something goes awry, and the generator that actually powers up all of the traps and the electrical fence goes off. And the survivor has to go out of the bunker and just repel all of the mutant attacks on the bunker. But the catch is that the mutants aren't the only thing the survivor should be afraid of, because there is also the developer himself that's actually obstructing his view. And I wanted to say, I'm saying this because it matters in terms of origins, because when you're just getting back from this huge break, I felt like I had a story to tell. Like, I was depressed and I was stuck in a really bad place. And I think that the dual narration in One Rotten Oath reflects that, because you have this survivor who is trying to survive in this weird post-apocalyptic setting, but then you have the dev himself that's also struggling to make this all work. And I remember I read the review of One Rotten Oath on like Steam, and someone wrote that it's not about surviving in game, but also surviving what's outside of it. And I think I gotta agree with this, because some things that are shown in One Rotten Oath from the dev perspective actually happened to me as well. So it's kind of a meta narrative that I put my heart into as well. I felt like I had to get this out of my chest, and even if no one plays through the game, or just, if the game becomes like totally ignored or with mostly negative reviews or something like that, at least I said it, and I got this off my chest, and I closed that chapter that was haunting me for all those like 5 years of the like cancelled projects and stuff like that. It definitely hurt a lot when I was doing all of this, but I also wanted to show it to the players as well. And I'm not gonna lie to you, the story is grim, and maybe the game is not that long in itself, and maybe it has that little glimmer of hope that something might happen, that something might just work out. But, well, the life is as it is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And I wanted to reflect that my state of mind that I had throughout those years. And it's heavy. When someone is playing the game, they start mostly with ha ha ha, fun game, weird art style and stuff like that. But then when they get deeper into this specific narrative, because that's kind of what the game is about, I see the change in them. And it's interesting because there's a lot of streamers and YouTubers that played through the game and were like completely blown away or even speechless by the end, because they didn't know if that's true or not, if that really happened, or is that it. So I'm glad, even though it's not a huge thing. I can't, at least right now, say that One Rotten Oath is a bigger success than a trip to Yugoslavia or stuff like that, because the game is actually like by this point 6 months old. So it's basically just wrapping up the speed here. But it's personal. I gotta say this. It's personal. And it's weird because I wanted it to be weird. If you aren't like deterred by the weird graphics, then you're in for a great story, I hope, at least. And I tried to kind of explain my reasoning, because there is something after you beat the game as well. But I'm not gonna spoil it, because I'm gonna leave that mystery for all of our viewers here, listeners actually. So it was kind of like a catharsis here for me. So yeah, it's an important project, and I'm always afraid when someone picks it up, because there is always that little worry that someone might not get it, or just straight up like take the game for the strict fiction. But I think I'm ready for that, to actually hear what people have to say, and I hope this will make me better as a game developer as well, because I know that I made that step forward that I couldn't take for a few years. So that's huge. That's huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's really scary to be vulnerable in one's art in general, much less with such a personal story of kind of depression and isolation, and telling that through the game is really fascinating. And I also think it's cool that the type of meta narrative that you tell in One Rotten Oath is very uniquely FMV, where you're in the game and you're playing this unique art style, like you talked about, where the enemies are kind of these full motion video characters, but you're walking around in a world that's a little bit more rendered like maybe one would think of as a basic first person shooter. But then for the meta narrative cutscenes, they're straight up, live action video. And I think that is such a cool way to blend things together, because the art styles, while distinctive between kind of the cutscenes and the gameplay, they're near enough and alike enough to kind of unite that kind of cathartic narrative in a way that I think is really compelling.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And super unique as well to play it just visually. I would love to hear more about the importance of place in your games. Obviously, you're a Polish game dev, making games with Eastern European, landmarks, obviously being on site with the game you made in high school, and themes as well. How does your background and culture come into the interactive experiences you create, if at all? How do you think it impacts them?
Well, I gotta say that it was a pure accident, actually. Back when we started with A Trip to Yugoslavia, people were like, yeah, these guys are probably for Balkans or other stuff. And I'm like, no, dude, we're like strictly Polish and we're not in Yugoslavia or ex-Yugoslavia terrains. And I remember that we had to like put those disclaimers that the game isn't based on a real conflict, and people were like sending me weird theories that we're playing as a children soldiers and stuff like that. And I'm like, I couldn't even think of that myself. So what's the most interesting part about A Trip to Yugoslavia is that the game's title was actually kind of a inside joke, because like the main lead programmer of A Trip to Yugoslavia was actually from Croatia, and he was like living in those old woods like areas, and we wanted to like, oh dude, you're like on the ex-Yugoslavian terrains in the middle of the forest. So yeah, we're gonna go with Yugoslavia since the country doesn't exist anymore and it's like on your territory, so it's our inside joke. But then people started talking to us and, what have you done, guys? You're gonna get such a big backlash from that. So I guess from that point on, I started to like really feel the importance of the locations and places in our games. And I think it was mostly seen during Purgatorium, because then and there we used those really old, dilapidated like basements in old Polish like apartment blocks. And when I played through the demo, I felt it like it's really such weirdly unique for other people, but I lived like that throughout the years. I was going down to that basement to pick up the pickles, and right now we're recording a horror game here with those like full motion video elements. And I never really thought much about it then, but yeah, the Purgatorium era actually gave me that insight into it. So whenever we're talking about that Polish aesthetic here, let's say, I love it because it kind of shows the places that I live in on a daily basis. Like some of the stuff for One Rotten Oath was taken in my hometown of Tczew, on the old military terrains right where we started. So I actually came back to those like old terrains that I recorded A Trip to Yugoslavia on. But then those development parts were recorded in Gdańsk, which is a part of the Tri City here near the coast. in the apartment that we've rented for like a year or so. So it gave us this, great contrast between the old and known terrains to the suffocating apartment blocks. And then, when I actually saw your question, I thought to myself, this guy cracked me open, but I didn't crack myself open in that department. So actually, seeing that question from you was hearing this question from you was actually great, because that made me realize that even more, that the locations that I record in are especially important in that Polish FMV aesthetic. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's something that I think does imbue your games not only with a uniqueness as far as look, but I really appreciate games as a medium through which kind of that it's not necessarily like cultural interaction, but it's like seeing the perspective of a indie games in particular, seeing the perspective of one or a few folks and their perspective on art and their interest in theme through these visuals is one of the things that really draws me to indie games in particular. And I think that with FMV, it's even more naturally, you're going to be drawn to the perspective of the artist that's making it. And so I think that it was fascinating that to hear that you kind of circled all the way back to the original terrain that you were recording a trip to Yugoslavia on, and then came all the way back to it for this current project. And I think that's both poetic and very fascinating to me as a player and a fan.
Yeah,
So
it felt important to me to like
yeah.
get back to those military terrains, because maybe there was something that I overlooked there back then,
Hmm.
like those basically almost 10 years ago. Wow, that's weird how the time flies by. But then when I was just walking through all of those paths, those memories are coming back to you, and you even feel more of that. You're going through the ghosts of your own there. And which actually made me a little sad as well was that I was on those old military terrains just recently to even take like more photos for maybe future projects or stuff like that. And would you believe that all the buildings and ruins that we've had on a trip to Yugoslavia are actually destroyed right now? There are
Hmm.
no buildings at all. Everything is like demolished right to the ground. There is nothing there anymore. So sorry, no a trip to Yugoslavia remake in the like current time. But yeah, it's weird when you're coming back and just doing this full circle moment there, and you're feeling that inspiration, all the like paths that you took, and you start to appreciate even more that you're here where you are today. So yeah, that was important to me as well.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And in the context of just a broader like European history, thinking of the major cyclical traumas, trials, and like celebrations that the landscape around you has gone through, it's fascinating to hear that you've kind of gone through your own cycle, even just in 10 years, which is so short compared to kind of the broader timeline I'm talking about, that have where you've interacted with kind of like ghosts as you've described it. And I imagine there's so much history and so many ghosts on that same landscape. And I think it's really cool that you're honoring some of those themes through your games, even though it sounds like it was probably not as intentional as I'm making it out to be. I think it's no less impactful. So I think that's really cool. Um, I am interested in hearing more about kind of your foundational inspirations as an artist. You've mentioned some of the games that have inspired you, but I would love to hear more about as an FMV game maker, as just a programmer, game developer, or as a filmmaker. What kind of forms your core artistic interests in games or movies or any other art you want to mention?
There is like a lot of it. It's hard to pinpoint the exact thing, because I'm like taking those inspirations from, well, if I said the life itself, it would be a bit too poetic, I think. But I listen to a lot of music. Actually, my fiance is actually into arts and stuff like that. So she's painting a lot. So whenever she draws or paints anything, I just, see this from my perspective and confronts it with her. And yeah, a lot of things inspire me, like the weather, the people outside, wherever I hear the parts and bits of conversation, daily commute. There is a lot of going on in my head whenever, I'm just doing daily things. And I know that might sound a bit concerning, but it is what it is. Whatever like happens around me and whatever I tend to watch in my TV or, even when I'm taking a shower or anything, there is like this spark sometimes that just hits me out of nowhere. And I'm like, I gotta write this down, even if I am in the middle of the shower. And some of those projects are, going to be a big thing or a small thing. One Rotten itself also came out from the spark like that. Like I said, it was basically conceived on the like stoplights. So yeah, it's the inspiration is everywhere. We just have to be like open for it, I think, because people don't really actually notice this. I think there is a lot of various inspiration all around you. So yeah, even if you are just looking at leaves falling from the trees, maybe that can spark something in you. It's really a big creative process here. So I guess we gotta cut this short here because I might get a little bit too philosophical.
No, that's it's awesome for me to hear, and it's also I can definitely relate as having a very active mind as kind of the day goes by. So I appreciate any and all philosophical meanderings. But
Yeah,
that
I can
said,
talk
maybe
for hours here. So
yeah, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that off mic sometime. We'll just do a phone call.
yeah, the entire session, like 10 hours long.
But thinking along the same line, we've heard some of your interest as far as like interacting with your fiance and going about your life. What are you up to when you're not making games? What brings you joy in other areas of your life?
I actually like to go on a long walks. I have a car and stuff like that, but I always like to just go out somewhere, like on foot, and just take this in, this, entire environment and stuff around me. It's kind of calming for me. But quite on the contrary, I actually make music as well. And I
Cool.
play in a pop punk band with my sister. Although we're kind of on a hiatus here because we have a lot of other stuff to do, like, making games, for example. But I'm also playing in like this kind of an alternative band with my fiance as well. We are actually
Oh, cool.
recording our like second EP. So yeah, I actually came up to this interview basically straight from the recording studio as well. So that's why I kind of had to like switch my mind to English and try to pronounce words correctly. But yeah, that's how it goes. I'm actually, taking the long walks, playing music, and also cleaning dishes, which can be tough to actually hear, but I love cleaning dishes. Although if they are greasy and the forgotten pans from like a week ago, I hate this. I have to like buy myself a washing machine for this kind of like accidents. But overall, when you are standing in front of the sink, you're just thinking a lot, and then maybe another great game idea can come out of cleaning dishes. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, we're very similar. It sounds like because I also like long walks, cleaning dishes, and thinking a lot about stuff. So that is an endearing connection to make. Would you mind? I'll put obviously all your games in the show notes of this episode. If you remember, could you follow up via email and send me maybe some of your recorded music or where folks can find that and support
Sure
your
thing, no
bands?
problem at all.
Okay, yeah, great.
Will
Because I'll
do.
put those in the show notes too. And my last question is a bit of a two-parter. It's related to giving advice to other game developers in the indie space. The first part of it I'm interested in is you've obviously talked in this episode about working with publishers. It sounds like you've had some positive experiences and some that were pretty negative. What have you learned from working with publishers as kind of a solo or small team game maker, and what has kind of been the back and forth as far as like the pros and the cons of doing so?
Yeah, I can't talk about it because the NDA gets me. Nah, just kidding. I actually can. Well, the thing is that in terms of working solo and working with the publisher, I actually feel like the marketing is a huge part here, because when we released A Trip to Yugoslavia back in like 2017, I'm talking about the director's cut that's available on Steam. After like the first month, I could afford a new PC, which for me then was like, I'm in high school. How can I afford a brand new PC from the PC store? Like, what's happening? But, today, while working solo, it's completely hard to do like marketing and get players on board. I mean, probably times have changed as well, because back in 2016-17 we still had to go through Greenlight, and get into Steam was a bit of a big deal. But today you can just go through the Steam Direct by paying like those $100, I think. But then it's hard because players are, I don't want to say more picky. Maybe the player base is different today. Everybody is basically playing roguelikes for the most part, or just weird job simulators. And I'm from the crowd that, played a lot of single player experiences, short titles, horror titles. And the multiplayer parts or the simulation parts were basically stuck to the like big games, like, I don't know, Silent Hunter series, or other tactical shooters like Brothers in Arms, Road to Hill 30, or even Rainbow Six, whatever. But the thing is that people actually love those, I don't want to say clicker games, like incremental games, or other weird, engaging and kind of, I don't want to call this like gambling experiences. It's weird. I actually sound like an old fart right now, just telling you this. But it's weird seeing how many games are actually coming out on a daily basis. It's super hard for us indie devs out there, and I think I can freely say for everyone that we are fighting for like every single player. And I think we can say this, that before we started the interview, I actually wrote to you that can we just like put our interview an hour later, because I was caught up by the surprise streamer. And when I see this kind of opportunities, I actually jump on board. I'm trying to be there for those players, for everybody who's watching. I'm trying to leave the comment, say something about the game. Just, it's not about being active. It's about being there for players. And yes, it's hard. It's, there's always 50-50 chance that you're gonna find a great player or a great person that you can talk to and have this deeper connection even through the blue sky or the other social medias. But sometimes you can just straight up hit the wall and just bump into the worst player in the world that will absolutely hate you and spread the like false claims about the games and such. And here's the thing. both of those players have the power to change everything, because by leaving the review on Steam, like, you can help us out, or just tank us down entirely. And I'm kind of worried about this, if we still have space for this to create those kind of short, meaningful experiences. And I remember I had a lot of conversations about the game's length and the game price in terms of One Rotten Oath, because how are you even gonna price the FMV game in the times like these? So
Yeah.
when we got to Poznan Game Arena, I actually spoke with everybody who played the game. We had thousands of players there, and yeah, that's the specifics of those kind of big, huge festivals. But we had literally thousands of players on our like PC as well, which was insane to me as well, especially after all of that hiatus thing. But when I spoke to them, I was worried, because I told them, hey, it's gonna be a weird game, short game, and it's probably gonna cost you about $7. And I expected hate to pull out on me totally. Because let's face it, people are actually not really buying games on Steam unless they are on sale. So that's a huge turnoff. And even if you're pricing accordingly, people can start buying your game when it's like 90% off, like in this viral meme that comes around every now and then. But when I spoke to people and said, hey, this game will take you about 2 to 4 hours to complete, depending on if you are getting both of the endings and all of the achievements, and it's gonna cost you about like $7. And I was waiting for that hate to come out, but people were like, "Hey, that's even cheaper than the movie ticket in the cinema, so I think we should go with that." But then when you are actually arranging those prices right before you release the game, there is always something telling you you shouldn't be pricing your game like that. This game should cost $5 or even less, because the market is broken. Let's face it. I mean, even if you price your game accordingly, there is still gonna be a big blockbuster game that calls itself indie and just drop all the prices down, or straight up make other games postpone their launch, which is completely insane to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's maybe just me, just a frustrated indie dev talking about the current market, hoarder. But it's actually, it's sad. It's totally sad for me, because even if we still have those platforms like itch.io, we had this like weird situation where all the bigger games and smaller games and great games were actually hit by that weird credit card manufacturer. I don't
Right.
want to like speak big words here, but I remember that some of the games were actually like straight up banned or hidden or stuff like
Yeah.
that. And that actually makes me wonder if there is even a place for us anymore, indie devs. Like, everybody can call themselves indie today, but even if the core team is like made of 5 people, after launch you just get to know their investors or stuff like that, that
Yeah.
actually paid them millions to pay other freelancers to do their work for them. And it's hard. Game Jolt, where we started putting our games first, where a trip to Yugoslavia was actually, awarded, because we were part of the Jolties 2016 as well. We were on the 5th place there, which made us land our spot on the main page of the Game Jolt back in the day. So the Game Jolt is basically dead today. When I wanted to put One Rotten Oath there as well, I just saw those weird games that are 100% viruses, and lack of moderation and stuff like that. I'm just worried for the future. I mean,
Yeah.
we have Steam, but the Steam also, takes its cut, let's face it. And
Yeah.
it's hard with all the algorithms and other stuff like that. So yeah, whenever it comes to that, I just wanted to say that I'm really glad and happy for every player that is, gonna play the game, regardless of if he likes the game or just straight up hates it. It's something that I put my heart into. My brother put his heart into playing all of those weird mutants, and my fiance also put her heart into it because she composed the entire soundtrack. I mean, she just saw the screenshots on the screen and recorded everything in one go. Basically, the
Wow.
entire soundtrack that is like 18 minutes long. And it's great to see your projects go into that weird fruition phase. But I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not trying to be famous or other stuff like that. It's not about it. It's more about finding those players who can appreciate the game and be there for us as well, because we want to be for them. And especially this counts to me as well, because I want to be for them. I don't want to disappear like I did 5 years ago due to, basically illness at that point. Because let's face it, that's what it is. And I had to fight with it in order to make that first step. And if I find even one person who will find the game helpful, or will find the game meaningful, that's a lot to me, and I'm proud of it. And I'll try to do my best to speak with that person, to interact with it, with him, her, or whatever else of the other pronoun they're used. Because come on, we're all a family here. It's important. It's important for me, and even if I won't be able to be as successful with my games as a trip to Yugoslavia was, I'm still gonna do this. I will still try to make meaningful experiences, or maybe even less meaningful. We'll see what the inspiration will bring to me. But I want to do this. I don't want to make big games with big budgets, whatever. I just want to have this place to express myself, to put these weird ideas in, and just see if other people like it. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts. You can't do indie games just for money. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that anymore. And yeah, I guess that's what counts. The people who are making that kind of art, and people who are getting this kind of art. And yeah, some people might even like call me a hypocrite right now and say to me that, yeah, if you wanted this to be like that, maybe you should release the game for free. Yeah, maybe I could, maybe I should, but at the end of the day, I'm not in high school anymore. Some of the like bills have to be paid. Even if I had the help from my family, they also have their own bills to pay. And it's a tough world we live in, especially after all of that weird other sicknesses that hit us during like 2020 and lasted for a few years. It's a weird time, man. What can I say? Like, yeah, at the end of the day, I just wanted to say that if there is an indie dev or aspiring indie dev, just listen to us. uh, just try, man, or girl. Just do your best, even if your first game doesn't land, or even if it lands, which I actually applaud you if it does today. Then just do it for fun, do it for yourself, do it because you want to make games. It's Don't hold yourself back. Don't leave this for another day. Just do it. You may never know where it just puts you. I mean, I was in high school. And I was touring the entire Poland with my first game, and it was a stupid interactive movie made by a bunch of friends on the old military terrains in a small town of Tczew. Like, do it, try. You don't even need a PC from NASA. I actually used like the old Nikon Coolpix L110, I think, which had the HD only as a sticker on the big box, and it didn't even record in 720p. And I did the entire thing on my sister's old dual core laptop. So yeah, you can do this. Just try. You don't have to make the entire Unreal Engine 5 game right now. Just try. Go out there, see what sticks. Just be happy with yourself and be happy with what you made, because hey, you made it this far. Even if like there is some kind of weird hater just coming around there at you, you're better than him because you actually did something and put yourself out there for the critic, and that's commendable. And yeah, if you are hearing this, indie dev, dear indie dev, just do it. Try. Good luck. You have this. I'm counting on you. See you out there.
Amazing. Well, we'll end it there. Piotr, such a bright presence, and it was really lovely talking to you. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've had a super busy day,
Thank
so
you.
it means a lot to me. And that was Piotr. I feel like I say his name almost with like a Dutch accent, which I can't imagine is correct. But Piotr, thanks so much for being on. It means the world. And with like my family having a lot of ties to Poland, a lot of my ancestors were Polish. It always means the world to talk to Polish developers and understand just how vibrant the tech scene, and in particular the game scene, is over in Eastern Europe, where a lot of my family hails from. Piotr was a creative at heart, and you can tell, especially at the end when he kind of opens up about his other passion in music. He's in a couple different bands, and even though he had an engine and he decided to work with an engine that was not set up for doing FMV projects, he is one of those bright, luminous coders who's able to kind of make it work. And it sounds like the folks who do the engine, who work with GDevelop, really appreciated it and patched in some of the solutions that he made. So if you're interested at all in any of the story, or perhaps how the game One Rotten Oath reflects Piotr's 5-year hiatus from games and kind of the depression and looking inward that he experienced during that, and the meta narrative along those lines, if any of that interests you, at least go wishlist, if not buy and play One Rotten Oath. I played it through. It's, like Piotr said in the episode, pretty short, 2 to 4 hours, and impactful experience to be sure, and I recommend it. So go ahead and have a look. It will definitely look like nothing you've played this year. I can pretty much guarantee that. And I'll put all of Piotr's wonderful games and projects in the show notes. So for my spiel today, I kind of wanted to talk about stuff and space. Recently, my partner Jamie and I moved. So we moved to a new place. It's got some smaller space constraints. So we've been downsizing quite a bit, getting rid of quite a bit of stuff. And that always feels really cathartic. And it's also led me to realize just how vibrant of a Craigslist free scene there is in the Seattle area. You've got people on there giving away really nice furniture, some really not nice furniture, and just all sorts of things on like those buy nothing, free cycle, those types of groups, those objects that they bring, just every manner of object. They're giving away table legs, they're giving away tops to water bottles, things no one would ever need, right? To today I saw a pretty interesting listing. It was for 3 free Switch games, and my partner and I have a Switch, and I was like, oh yeah, no brainer. Let's drive over and get those. But the drive was like 45 minutes, right? So definitely not a inconsequential drive. And the games were, I think it was like Crash Racing, the other Crash Bandicoot game for the Switch, and a Cars like Disney licensed title. And so like games I'm not that excited about, right? And I don't think many folks here in the year of our Lord 2026 would be all that jumping on playing those older releases at this point. But nevertheless, like games, they have some value. Switch is still, a system that folks appreciate and probably will for years and years and years as a console that has kind of changed the gaming landscape. So I was still considering it, and it got me thinking a lot about like not only physical space and physical media, which I think is an interesting concept because I think around the time that folks were like, okay, we're going down from VHS tapes to DVDs and CDs. Okay, we're going from DVDs and CDs to digital. Okay, digital is now streaming. And it's all been kind of in service of packing our lives down or creating more space in the home for other gadgets or other furniture or just minimal space, which I really appreciate. But with that has come kind of a lack of autonomy and a lack of ownership over games. And DVDs, music, movies, all that stuff. So that's one strand of it. And thinking about the luxury that physical media is, not only in the space you need to house a collection of physical media, but also in, the cost that comes along with having that space, that comes along with buying each individual thing. It makes sense that streaming has become the kind of default option for how on the surface it seems like a cheaper and far less space space intensive mode of consuming this media. But then you think about all the stories that are coming out today, data centers taking up massive amounts of space, massive amounts of energy, making computer parts so much more expensive. And it's almost like we're shifting, and this is a very common thing in kind of the Western world these days. I feel like we're shifting the space as we have been shifting through globalization, through offloading trash to countries that we perceive to be less than, what have you. We are kind of offloading that space debt to an area that is less fortunate or can't pay to prevent the space from being there. And so it got me thinking about kind of that physical media versus digital media kind of spatial idea. But then it also got me thinking about the instinct to collect. And I definitely have that. So I'm, as like a game player, I love having the physical media, particularly for consoles that are older. So like GameCube, all of the Nintendo handhelds, PSP, systems like this where I can still get the games, for between 15 and 20 bucks. They're not breaking the bank. But I really like having them on my shelf, and I feel like it is an element of decor and personality and interest to me enough that I like investing the space and money in having some of those physical games. And it got to the point where, like, even though when I sit there and look at the free listing and I look through the games and I'm like, will I play any of these? The answer is pretty much definitively no. Like, I have so much in my Steam backlog that I can play right here on my computer that I would rather play than these 3 Switch games. And yet I still consider driving the 45 minutes to go pick them up and just to have them. And the more I think about space and having things, I think the more it disturbs me how ingrained the idea of stuff and owning things and consuming things is, at least where I'm from in the US, to kind of our culture and our ability to feel good, right? Kind of the dopamine rush from purchase to purchase or pickup to pickup, and always in pursuit or chasing that next purchase. Because I think a lot of the time we believe that we are what we consume. So if we buy books, we're intelligent. If we buy games, we're fun and kind of loving of systems. If we buy computers, we're nerdy. If we buy sports equipment or, gym gear, then we are going to be strong, right? Whether or not we're actually putting the time into these different hobbies and activities that each in themselves can carry so much meaning, but the meaning isn't there unless it gets done. And you can do those things with so many different materials. They don't need to be expensive, and they certainly can be recycled and reused across activities. So I was just thinking that I ultimately didn't go and pick up these free Switch games, but I highly encourage you to have a look at what you've got in your closet, what you have just laying around, and thinking, does it actually inspire joy in you? And if not, getting rid of it can certainly be cathartic, and at least get you well acquainted with the Goodwill donation centers in your area. So yeah, that's my spiel for the day. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day whenever you're listening to this, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.